To get started, you're going to want to have some watercolor paper, blue tape, paintbrush, a paper towel, 2 cups of clear water, the All of Mankind stencil, a gel pen, and of course your watercolor paints. If at all possible, have some graphite paper for tracing. If you don't have that, just color the back side of your tracing paper with a number 2 pencil or a 6B pencil. The first thing you're going to do is cover the outside edges of your watercolor paper with the blue tape. Take the graphite paper, the darkest side facing towards the watercolor paper, and put the tracing paper on top of that graphite paper. Secure it with some blue tape, but only at the top of the pages. Using a ballpoint pen or a hard pencil, trace over all the black lines, and you'll see that the graphite paper makes it transfer onto the paper underneath. Keep flipping up your paper and graphite paper up periodically just to check and see if you're making the lines you thought you were. Once you're done, peel off the tape from your graphite paper and your tracing paper and put them to the side. Outline all of your pencil marks with the black Sharpie. We're going to start off the painting by mixing red and brown in your mixing tray. That is the cover of your watercolors. Fill up your brush with the reddish brown color and start by painting the entire neck. And then, when you're starting to paint the face, start with just the jawline and a little bit above that. Use water to pull the paint to the rest of the face. You don't need to keep grabbing more paint because this creates a more gradiated effect on the watercolors. Slowly over time, you're going to be building up more shadowy layers on your paper. And I started on the hairline, just with a shadow, and then use that technique with water to smooth out the transition between the paint you just added and the paint that's already on your paper. For the next person, put some yellow on your paintbrush and mix it in with the brown you used for the first face. The other thing you're going to mix in is the cooler red color from the top of your palette. Then finally mix in pure water. Because watercolors uses the white of the page instead of white paint, you're going to use just water to mix in with your new color so it thins out the paint and it's a lighter color. Paint the middle face all one color to start out with. Once you're done, color half of the shared portion of the face, that same skin tone. With that skin tone, also make a few shadows under and on top of the eye. Then do pretty much the same thing to the other shared portion of the face as well. To change the skin tone slightly, add some yellow and some red into the skin tone you already have. Paint in the face completely like we did with the previous. And of course, the shared eye in the shared eyes closest to the third face. For the last face, just to lighten up the skin tone, we're only going to be adding a couple drops of water. This time, only paint in half the face and use that water technique we did before where you just paint with plain water and drag the paint with the plain water to the rest of the face. Don't forget to make it a little bit darker on the neck since it's going to be in shadow, and then paint in the other side of the shared eye. create the first brown skin tone that we made with the brown and the cool red. Then paint in the last shared eye. The next step is to start adding shadows to each of the different faces. This is to some extent up to your own discretion. But in general, under the hair, there will be some shadows. Under the nose and at the side of the nose, there will be some shadows. And underneath the eye, since your brow often is farther out in the face and the eye is sort of recessed into the brow. It's easy to get too dark too quickly at this part of the process. So what I usually do is take a paper towel on the wet paint and pick up some of the paint really delicately. And if it's dry, sometimes I will add water to the paint and do the same thing. When you're adding shadows to the rest of the faces, just think of it as essentially the colors in the original skin tone, just less water, more paint. Also, feel free to add some color to the lips. Oftentimes, the lips aren't pure red or pink or anything. They're a skin tone mixed with a more pink or red color. When adding the hair, I just used the darkest versions of the colors possible. So with the black hair, I mixed black with just a little bit of brown and colored most of the hair in that color and used that water technique to pull the paint over to the end, but just a little bit because I wanted the hair to be pretty dark. For the second figure, I did brown mixed with yellow and the same techniques as the hair for the first figure. For the third figure, I just used plain black paint. Then for the last, I used a lot of yellow mixed in with a little red and brown. I used the same techniques as the first figure. Then, since I'm going to be switching to painting their clothes, I'm going to use the same yellow color to paint the first figure's shirt, but adding a little bit of orange. Feel free to add some shadows in a slightly darker color. I used the orange, I mixed it to the yellow. For the middle two shirts, I did solid colors. The first one red, the second one green. Also, feel free to do this later. I realized I hadn't finished the hands yet. Those will use the same colors we did earlier in the video for the initial skin tones. And then of course now you can see me finishing up that green shirt. Feel free to add some darker colors underneath the hands as a shadow. For the last shirt, use the cooler red and start with just the pure color on the left side. Then as you get farther to the right, just use water in that technique we used before, where you pull the paint all the way to the right with just water. Do the same with the arm from the bottom to the top. When starting on the geometric pieces in the background, really rinse off your brush and use plain water to paint in the shape you're going to fill in. Then, with the cerulean or the teal, grab some paint and paint it in one section of the still wet water. The paint should spread at least a little bit, as much as the water will let it. do this with different blue colors all over the same piece. And fill up the whole geometric background in this way. I personally added some of the darker teal to the middle two shirts as a color to darken it. This part is optional. Then, the very last part, put some black in your mixing tray, just so you have a lot of it ready, and paint in all the white in the back and all the cracks between the geometric shapes. And there you are, the painting part is done. Now it's time to move on to the white gel pen. Use your white gel pen just to highlight, mostly on tops of the back lines that you already made. This is especially important around the faces because it just makes the faces pop.
Sometimes that it doesn't make sense. It's even harder to comprehend. It's a long night.
Don't forget to take the blue tape off from the edges. Always pull outwards, never pull inwards, just in case you happen to hurt the paper a little. That's all I have. Thanks for watching. Be sure to show us how your paintings go, because we'd love to see.